Today, we're completely rewriting rock history at lightning speed. We are pulling back the curtain on one of the most glaring omissions in modern music, uncovering a story that's been buried, ignored, and literally thrown in the trash for decades.
When you think of the grunge movement, you probably picture the massive legendary icons, right? Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains. You immediately picture the angst, the heavy guitars, and that total global takeover of alternative rock.
And along with those bands, we instantly think of the Pacific Northwest, specifically Seattle in the early 90s, as the undisputed ground zero. I mean, that's the accepted timeline of a musical revolution we've all been taught to believe.
But what if I told you the true founder wasn't some guy in a thrift store flannel shirt at all? What if the narrative we've all been sold is missing its absolutely most crucial architect? Well, today, we're answering that by looking at the artists who actually laid the foundation.
Section 1. Enter Tina Bell and Bam Bam.
So let's drop the needle on 1983. That's the year Tina Bell formed the band Bam Bam, which is actually an acronym for Bell and Martin, formed alongside her husband, guitarist Tommy Martin, and bassist Scotty Ledgerwood. Now keep in mind, this was years before grunge became a household word, and well before any of those famous bands we just talked about had even stepped foot in a recording studio. Tina Bell completely shattered the stereotypical mold of a grunge frontman. Instead of an apathetic guy in flannels staring at his shoes, you had Tina, a black woman who was regal, fierce, and highly theatrical. She brought this entirely different, totally magnetic energy to the heavy, distorted, sludgy sounds they were creating.
Standing at just 5'2", her diminutive frame belied this massive, earth-shaking instrument. She had a voice that could flip from a sultry coo to an absolutely spine-chilling shriek in a second. And what's really wild is that this vocal power was actually trained in the Mount Zion Baptist Church Choir in Seattle. It gave her this soulful, dynamic range that literally no one else in the punk scene possessed at the time.
Her bandmates remembered her absolute command of the room. Bassist Scotty Ledgerwood noted she had an aura that was regal without arrogance. Even when she was raging on stage, she was incredibly fluid and graceful. And if a crowd wasn't responding, she didn't shrink back. She'd lead the band on with even more ferocity. She just captivated audiences and absolutely demanded respect.
Section 2. The true ground zero. Look, the timeline tells the real story here. Bam Bam formed in '83 and recorded their EP Villains Also Wear White in 1984. Guys, that is a full year before Green River debuted, and Green River is almost always cited as the touchstone of early grunge. Plus, it was a whole 4 years before Nirvana recorded their Bleach demos.
Not only were they early, but Bam Bam was actually the very first band to record at Seattle's legendary Reciprocal recording studio with producer Chris Hanzak. They literally established the sonic template at the exact same studio that would later define a whole generation of music, including Nirvana's early tracks.
And Bam Bam was deeply woven into what would become grunge royalty. Get this, their first drummer, a young Matt Cameron, who'd go on to superstardom in Soundgarden and Pearl Jam. A young Kurt Cobain was actually a roadie and a massive fan of the band. Even the Melvins, another cornerstone of the genre, opened for them. They weren't just on the periphery, folks. They were the absolute center of the scene.
Section 3. Erased by Prejudice.
So, if they were there first and deeply connected to the biggest names in rock, why don't we know her name? Well, the music industry gatekeepers simply refused to accept or sign a black woman leading a heavy punk rock band. The industry pigeonholed black women back then. They expected them to sing soul, pop, or hip-hop. The rock and punk scenes were treated as a strictly white male domain, and labels just wouldn't take a chance on a band that didn't fit that super rigid visual mold.
And it wasn't just corporate indifference either. She faced terrifying, overt prejudice. During a gig at a famous Seattle club called the Metropolis, Bell was racially abused by neo-Nazi skinheads in the crowd. But rather than back down, she literally physically defended herself on stage. She swung her heavy mic stand like a lasso to fight them off, struck one of them, and then went right back to delivering what her bandmate called the most blistering set of their career. Now that is legendary.
But the erasure wasn't just physical at shows. It was a systematic, step-by-step deletion from the historical record by the media and the internet. First, record labels ignored them, denying them distribution. Then, a definitive oral history book of grunge called Everybody Loves Our Town referred to Bam Bam as a three-piece instrumental band, literally erasing their incredible frontwoman.
And if you can believe it, as recently as 2015, Wikipedia deleted her page, claiming a quote-unquote lack of sources.
Tragically, this all culminated in 2012. Completely disillusioned with the industry, Tina Bell had stepped away from music entirely in the 1990s. She passed away from cirrhosis of the liver at the age of just 55.
In a final, truly heartbreaking act of erasure, she died in obscurity in a Las Vegas apartment. By the time her family arrived to claim her things, almost all of her writings, lyrics, diaries, and belongings had been unceremoniously thrown in the garbage by the property managers. Just like that, a lifetime of brilliance simply discarded.
Section 4. The Godmother of Grunge restored.
But the story of the Godmother of Grunge absolutely refuses to end in the shadows. There is a powerful movement happening right now to correct the historical record. Her peers have fiercely championed her undeniable talent. Her former drummer, Matt Cameron, simply stated she was one of the greats, crediting her power, her charisma, and her lyrical genius, firmly placing her right alongside the best frontmen of his generation. Thanks to dedicated bandmates and family, her rightful throne is finally being restored. Her bassist Scotty Ledgerwood literally risked his life to save her master tapes from a house fire. And her son, TJ Martin, who actually happens to be an Oscar-winning filmmaker, has worked tirelessly to preserve her memory. In 2021, Seattle held a massive tribute concert featuring musicians from Pearl Jam and Fishbone. CBS aired a documentary about her, and her music is finally being reissued for a whole new generation of fans to discover.
Which leaves us with one massive, lingering question. If the Godmother of Grunge, a woman who laid the foundation for one of the biggest musical movements of the 20th century, could be erased so easily, who else is missing from the history books we think we know? What other brilliant pioneers are waiting to be rediscovered? Thank you for joining me on this explainer, and seriously, I highly encourage you to go listen to Tina Bell and Bam Bam today.